Okay, today I'm going to show you a real quick fix on your A-arms on a 650 Honda Rincon, where your A-arms get a lot of slack in them, the bearings start wearing out. I'm going to show you how to replace those and how to remove those fiber bearings that's inside the A-arm that's a little tricky to get out. You can notice the slack in this one. You can tell how the arm itself's got a lot of slack in it. So I'm going to show you the steps I take to go ahead and replace those bearings. And you've also got one here at the end of the shock absorber spring. There's a needle bearing in there. We're going to replace that also. While you're at it, you might as well get it out. Okay, the first step I'm going to take, I'm going to remove these two 10mm bolts here. Hold your brake line and a little breather line that comes out of your brake. Just going to remove those. Get the brake line separated from the A-arm. Get it pulled out of the way. That way you don't damage it or anything while you're trying to get this A-arm apart. Okay, I've got those two bolts out. Got this separated from the A-arm. That way I can just slide it over out of my way. Now next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to knock this, take this snap ring out right here. You got a snap ring to remove. I always just knock these through. They're a whole lot easier than getting down here and taking this bolt out here, because that's a tapered fit in there. Sometimes you have to beat them real hard to get out. I found if you can look, this is wet. I've put a little bit of WD-40 on it to let it soak there for a few minutes. So I'll remove this snap ring and just peck this. I'll lay a ball peen hammer on top of this flat side down. It should just knock right out of there, and that'll separate this knuckle right here, and then you got better access. Then all we have left is the two bolts up here and here, and that'll let everything loose. Okay, here I'm going to remove the snap ring. Get it out of my way here. Make sure you don't lose that. And don't have nobody to hold the camera for me, so I'm actually going to take my ball peen hammer. I'm going to lay it right here on top of this. Take another hammer and just peck that right out of there, and that'll release all that. Sometimes you can just lightly peck on them like that and they'll come right out, but I'm going to take another hammer and just peck right here on top of this ball peen here and just knock that right out. Okay, if you'll notice, after about 4 good licks, that just pecked right out of there. Come right out of the A-arm. Now I've got it separated. And you can see the slack now real good in that A-arm. Okay, next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to remove this bolt from the shock. Remove this bolt. It's got a nut. Both of them's got nuts on them. I'm going to remove those, and that way I'll be able to take the A-arm off. And I'm going to show you how to get those bearings out of there. They're pretty tricky. They can be hard to get out. Okay, I've got both bolts out. You'll notice the A-arm just fell down from the frame there. This bolt's loose here, so I should be able to just pull it right out of there. Take this out in the light so you can get a better look at what we've got here. You'll notice you got two caps here on the end. Those are just where your seals set inside there. These are actually seals. Here they'll just come right off with a screwdriver. Just get them down behind there. We'll replace all of this, and then I'll show you how to get these bearings out. I'm just going to take a screwdriver and I'm going to pry these seals off. The old seals just come right off there. Sorry, I can't keep the camera on it working with one hand here. Okay, there's the old seals off. Here's the old shaft. Just pulls right out. You can tell this one's been greased before because it's squeaking, making a lot of noise. Alright, these are the boogers right here. If you'll notice, you've got like a, I don't know if it's carbon fiber or what they're made out of, but there's like a plastic bearing in each side right there that's got to come out, and those are really in there. So I'm going to show you a trick to get those out, because I tried first to go through with a screwdriver punch, try to knock them out the other side, but there's really not enough lip and they just want to chip off. So I'll show you a little trick here, a little coal mining trick here, ingenuity to get those out. Now here's what we're attempting to get out. It's just a plastic or carbon fiber, I don't know what it's made of, it's just a little bush in there. There, that's what we're going to replace. Just goes right down in there. Kind of presses in there. But getting them out's what's the booger, so I'm going to show you how to get them out. If you look on the websites and stuff, if you look at the microfiche on, usually you don't see this bushing right here. It won't show it in the front. You have to make sure you order those. I seen one site on the internet that had those. I just use them for reference. I always buy my parts from Honda, genuine Honda parts. But you have to make sure you get this part. Even at the Honda shop, it don't show it on their microfiche. Let's see if I can get you a part number here. Not very good. But anyway, you'll find it if you need it. So I'm going to show you how to get these out. Okay, the way I do these, I just get me a regular old hacksaw blade. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to just take it with my hand. I'm going to get down here and I'm just going to saw on four corners. Four corners of the bushing. Just saw them like this. Go to the top at 12, 3, 6, and 9. I'm going to saw four places in it. And as you saw this, you'll see the black fiber coming out of it. Let's see if I can do it here one-handed. Just see the fiber coming out of there. And as you saw that, you will feel a difference when you get down. Don't forget these A-arms are aluminum, so you don't want to saw down into your aluminum. If you score them a little bit, it won't hurt them, but once that blade goes through that fiber and hits that aluminum, you'll be able to tell, because it'll get real slick that the aluminum's a little bit tougher than the fiber. But just saw them. What we're going to do is score them good. That way, then we can take a screwdriver and pick them, and they'll break, and then they'll fall right out. But I've tried to get them out before. You can't get them out without doing something of this nature here. So I'm going to saw these in four places, and then I'm going to show you how to knock them out. Okay, now if you look, you can see where I've sawed it here in four spots. You can see the fiber that's come off of it. I've scored it in four places. So now what you need to do is just take your screwdriver or your punch, whatever you're using, and just don't get on the aluminum part. Just get right on the edge of the bearing between two of your score marks and just hit down on that right there, and it should crack and fall right out. Got my camera propped up here. I'm going to show you how I hit this right here, and just show you how easy they come out once you score those. Where you can see it. You see it just breaks right up. You should be able to just come right through the back side here now. You get on it and just pop it right out. There you go. There's the old bushing. You can see where you can see my score marks in it where I sawed it. That just more or less relieves some pressure on it where it's pressed in there. If you'll notice, I don't really see any score marks in there. I didn't get too deep. I see a little bit of one right there, but once that's cleaned up, it'll polish right out of there. You'll never even know it. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same on the other side here. Get this one knocked out, and I want to clean it up real good, and then we'll put it back together and stick it back on the machine. Okay, I've got both bushings out. Now the next thing, if you want to replace this is the needle bearing here that the spring shock rides on. This one's got a lot of slack in it, so I'm going to go ahead and replace it while I've got it off. First thing you want to do is just get the old shaft out of it. Pull it out. You feel a little bit of a groove in it, probably where it's got some water in it. Seals is wore out. See that groove right there? Okay. Got two little, you see the needle bearing in there. Got two seals on each side here. Just take a screwdriver, stick in there, and just pop those right out. Try to get it out here while I don't know if I can do it one-handed or not. Just get under the lip. Pop those right out just like that right there. It's hard to do one-handed. You'll have a little easier time. I'll go ahead and pop this one out, and I'll show you how to get the bearing out. Okay, I've got both seals out now. See the needle bearing in there. So what you got to be careful now, that's a really thin race on that bearing. And if you'll notice, let's see which way I can turn it here we can see. You'll notice here where my screwdriver tip is, you'll see there's a little thin lip around that. You want to make sure when you drive that bearing out that you don't damage that lip right there. That's the fit that the bearing sits in. That's a real flimsy bearing, the race is. So it won't take much to knock it out, but just make sure you don't damage that little lip right there when you drive this bearing out. I want to drive this bearing out of here. I've moved it a little bit there, but it should come right on out. Of course, you see what I'm using. I'm using a socket here that comes out pretty easy, and I'm using a rubber mallet, so you shouldn't damage your socket driving it out. It's not too bad. So now you see you've got the fit here where your bearing sits. So I'm just going to reverse order. I'm going to put the bearing in, put the seals back on each side, and then we'll clean this up good and we'll assemble it. Okay, I've got my bearing out, got it cleaned up. Get these ends cleaned up here. I'm going to attempt to set the camera up here and just reassemble it all back together here. Watch me do it. You see I've got all my parts laid out here. I can set this camera up. Watch me put it back together. Biggest thing when you're putting it back together, you want to make sure that you don't throw this down on anything and damage these ends. It is aluminum. They're very easy to damage. So probably the first thing I'll do is put this bearing in here, the shock bearing. That way that ain't beating my new seals and stuff up here trying to get it in. So here's the new bearing. I like to put a little bit of anti-seize around inside there just to make sure that I won't have too much trouble getting it in. I'll set the bearing in here, and I'm going to get me a little block of wood so I can lay that down on it there, and we'll be able to get it in there. Okay, I've got me a block of wood here so I can lay this down solid, and I'm going to use a 15mm socket here just to peck it down in with. It's the same OD as the bearing, so I can just lay it right on the bearing, knock it down into the, and you want to make sure you start it straight and continue straight with it once you start it down in there. Give it just a few small pecks, make sure it's straight. Remember the lip I showed you earlier about not damaging. You want to drive that down to where it's flush. And you see the bearing in there. Okay, next thing you want to do is put your seals in. Seal, you'll see the lip goes toward the inside. There should be like a little groove here that'll turn toward the inside. These factory seals have got the metal showing on the outside, so that'll go in just like that. This ought to just push right in with your fingers. Want to try to keep it straight as you go in. Just push it in till it seats. Do the same thing for the other side. Just start it in there. Make sure you push it down in straight. Just push it down till it seats down solid. It feels pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to take a little just regular old axle grease, and I want to pack that bearing. Make sure you work it into the needles real good. You can always wipe away the excess. Okay, and then here's your inner race for the bearing. It just slides right in there. You'll have some excess grease pop out the backside. Just wipe it off. Okay, that part's finished. Now we're going to install these big races, or plastic bearings, where you want to call them. Make sure you don't damage it by laying it on the concrete or anything. You want to take a little bit of anti-seize. Just wipe it in here. That way that ain't no danger in that bearing seizing up going in there, because it is plastic. It will break if you're not careful. A little bit. Go ahead and get both ends here. And these ought to go in with just a little bit of hand pressure. I just turn them up on their end. Go ahead and start start it in. I'm just going to take my hand and just press it. Just put my hand on top of it and just press it right down in there. Keep a good even push and just push it right down in until it seats. There you go. And I'll do the same thing for the other side. Okay. Now both bearings are installed. Now next we'll put on the seals. Here are the seals. If you'll notice, they kind of taper. The big side of it goes toward the back. Just like that right there. Those also just press right on with your fingers. Just push them down on there till they seat. Do the same thing for the other side. There's both of them on. If your little plastic bushings don't, just take the palm of your hand and just keep driving down on it, pushing, keep good steady pressure. They should set right in. I do recommend using anti-seize or some kind of lubricant to get them down on there. But if you must, don't hit them with a hammer. You can use a rubber mallet or something. The last one I done, I had just peck them a little bit. Just use good even force, push them, knock them on down in there. I'm gonna put just a little dab of grease in these. A little bit around that seal face, both sides. Okay, next, here's your new, they call it a needle bearing. I just call it a shaft. We'll just slide it right through. A little grease will come out the end. Okay, once you got in there, you got your seal caps. And you just put just a little bit of grease in them just to hold them on, and also so they'll seat on that seal. Just slide them right on the ends. There's both caps on, and it's ready to put back on the machine. I'm going to wipe all the excess grease off this, and then we'll take it over and stick it back on the machine. Okay, here we are ready for reassembly. Just going to take the A-arm, lay it up in here, lay it back in the frame, stick my bolts back through. Okay, I'll get that bolt back in, not tighten them up yet. Then we'll leave everything loose till I get everything fitted. Here's the bolt for the shock to go back in. Here. Just Start the nut on it. Okay, now I'm going to put a little anti-seize on this, that way it'll just peck right back into place. Okay, what I'll do, I'll just set that right back in the hole. Get it lined up, get it started. And I'll take me a rubber mallet and I'll just peck around the edge here, right up in here, and that'll pop right back into place. About 3 good licks, and that popped right back in there. I'm going to put my snap ring back on. Make sure it's seated in good. Give it a peck or two. My rubber mallet. Make sure it's seated in good. Okay, now we got Les putting her 2 bolts to hold her brake lines back on and tighten everything up, and that'll finish it. Now I've got my snap ring back on. Got my 2 bolts holds my brake lines in. There's the new seal caps, bolt. Make sure you tighten everything up. You don't have to take all this off. You can do it right, just pull the tire. I got some other things I'm doing to the machine, doing a valve job. I figured I'd do these while I had it down, but that's the quick and easy on replacing those. I'm going to do the rear ones next, so watch for that video. And remember, cold keeps the lights on.